All right, tonight it is official. Another whopping 0.75% interest rate hike from your Fed. Coming up, we're going to explain in great detail how this is going to impact your ability to get a loan, pay off debt, finance a car, a house, whatever, and how many Americans will now be shut out of the dream, the American dream of owning a home, thanks to Joe Biden's insane economic and energy policies. Now, breaking only moments ago, Senator Joe Manchin just gave in to the radical climate alarmist cult, New Green Deal cult, agreeing to a new massive spending deal. Now, we're going to show you how his deal is going to hurt the people, specifically in his state of West Virginia, and hurt them dramatically. Plus, another day, another scandal surrounding the president's son and bagman, Hunter Biden. And later, we're going to bring you disturbing new details about Justice Kavanaugh's would-be assassin. And by the way, in a terrible decision tonight in the Nicholas Sandmann case, we'll tell you about that. But first, tonight we begin. You probably didn't notice, but Joe Biden has been in isolation for about a week following his COVID-19 diagnosis. Good news tonight, he's apparently all better and resuming his normal schedule, which is like his COVID schedule. And that is waking up late, going to bed early, plenty of naps in between, very few public events. And during a speech in the Rose Garden, as you just saw, about COVID and his COVID journey, Biden had to evoke the uniter that he is, his favorite subject, Donald Trump. Take a look.
Here's the bottom line. When my predecessor got COVID, he had to get helicoptered to Walter Reed Medical Center. He was severely ill. Thankfully, he recovered. When I got COVID, I worked from upstairs of the White House, and the office is upstairs, and for that 5-day period. The difference is vaccinations, of course.
Now, what Joe failed to mention is the current variant, which is BA.5, the dominant variant of Omicron, is much, much weaker than the original strain that infected then President Trump. And by the way, not that I recall, I never saw Donald Trump trip not once, not twice, but 3 times, climbing up the stairs to Air Force One and then having a spokesperson claim it was very windy. I don't know what's worse, that he tripped 3 times or they say the wind blew him over. Donald Trump never got blown over by the wind. In fact, this current COVID variant is so weak that even, a frail, cognitively impaired 79-year-old can recover at home with no problem whatsoever. And by the way, he forgot to mention he took the antiviral medicine Paxlovid. So Joe's recovery was aided by a highly effective new treatment. And of course, Biden was also helped by the vaccines, which were made possible by President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. But God forbid President Biden would ever give any credit to his predecessor. You know, the uniter-in-chief that he is just doesn't seem to have it in him. Take a look.
Millions of Americans have used Paxlovid, I tell you what, I think I used it. No, Paxlovid, including me.
Paxlovid, Joe, not Paxlovid, Paxlovid. Anyway, Joe Biden's a train wreck, his presidency an abject failure. And according to the White House press secretary, everything is going great. Americans are more prosperous than ever before. We're not in a recession. And based on the administration's brand new definition of a recession, they would be right, except it's not the true definition of a recession. Take a look.
And why is it the White House officials are trying to redefine recession?
No, we're not redefining recession.
If we all understand a recession to be 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth in a row, and then you have White House officials come up here to say, no, that's not what a recession is. It's something else. How is that not redefining recession?
Because that's not the definition. That is not the definition.
Brian Deese said in 2008, of course, economists have a technical definition which is of a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth.
I can tell you this.
Yesterday he said 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is not the technical definition of a recession.
It is
what
not.
changed?
It is not.
Why did he say that
it
was?
is not.
Ouch. Checkmate Peter Doocy. It's no wonder 75% of Democratic voters want someone else at the helm in 2024, even according to a fake news CNN poll. Take a look.
75%. The vast majority of Democrats, 3 out of 4, don't want Biden to be their nominee in 2024. That is according to a new CNN poll. Out front now, David Axelrod, former senior advisor to President Obama. David, I heard that and sort of stopped in my tracks for a second. 3/4 of Democrats don't want the incumbent president to run again. How worried should Biden be right now about that?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a very unhappy bit of data for him, and I'm sure, it is concerning.
It's a little more than concerning, David. It's deeply humiliating for Joe Biden, and it speaks volumes. Even Democratic leaders in Congress, including some of Joe's old friends from the Senate, they are openly refusing to endorse a Joe Biden second term. Take a look at this.
Do you support the president in his re-election bid?
I'm working on my own election, and that's all I'm focused on right now.
If the president chooses to run again in 2024, I mean, first of all, I'm focused on winning this majority right now and preserving a majority this year in 2022. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think if the president has a vision, then that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine.
Do you believe President Biden should run for a second term?
I have said if he runs, I'll support him.
Do you want to see Joe Biden run for a second term?
She's got to go.
Yeah, that's an easy question. That's not going to take long. Do you want to see Joe Biden run?
I don't want to answer that question because we have not. I don't want to answer that question.
Okay.
I mean, he's the president and he has the right to run for a second term. Absolutely. But I don't want to. I don't want. I'd rather you not.
Wow, he has the right to run. It isn't just about Biden's age, cognitive decline. Instead, the entire administration has failed on literally every key issue. Problems Democrats have is who are they going to elect that would adopt better economic and energy policies, because I don't see that happening, because 95% of the Democratic Party is part of the climate alarmist cult. From Afghanistan to COVID to our southern border to gas prices, inflation, the supply chain, you name it, widespread failure. And now he's going to waste, what, billions more dollars on climate initiatives and tax evil corporations? How many times have I told you corporations do not pay taxes? When those new tax hikes, Joe Manchin, go into effect, they will pass them on to the people in West Virginia and the other 49 states. Great win, Joe. And tonight there is yet another looming threat that the White House is all but ignoring. Put simply, that is the People's Republic of China. It is a massive problem. 2 years after infecting the world with COVID-19, China's communist dictatorship is now openly threatening to invade Taiwan. They are waging a bloody genocide against the country's minority Uyghur population. They're trampling on human rights in Hong Kong, and they're threatening our own Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. This is a line that's being crossed when we visit an ally, Taiwan. Sadly, China's Communist Party is also a malignant force in the United States. Intellectual property theft, mass production of fentanyl that they bring to our southern border, widespread espionage. China is constantly looking to get ahead at our expense. It's a hostile regime and led by a hostile actor. Now, even worse is China is now harvesting your data, spying on your family in plain sight. They do it through the popular Chinese-owned app known as TikTok. Here's Joe Rogan explaining why TikTok is and can be a legitimate threat to your privacy and your security. Take a look at this.
I think they saw that people are addicted to social media, and they came up with the most addictive version of social media, which is TikTok. It's the most addictive by far. It's the best for sucking people in. My kids are hook, line, sinkered on that. And I know a lot of other people are hook, line, sinkered to grown people.
It's good.
It's good. And it starts playing things immediately. The moment you turn it on, it's like playing you a new thing, playing you a new thing. You're like, ah! And you're just sucked into it. And all the while, it's monitoring your keystroke, audio settings. Well, by audio settings, that means it has access to your microphone. That means it's listening to you right now.
Just tell me how it ends,
now.
man.
It ends with China having all of your data. And if they develop
if they get all the data,
digital currency,
then what?
Well, you're
And to be clear, we're not accusing Joe Rogan of being a conservative. He might get upset. Now, to recap, China, are they really harvesting our data, spying on our families, stealing our technology, threatening to invade our ally, Taiwan, killing our people in this country, flooding the country with fentanyl? And now they're buying up thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of American land. That would include 300 acres near a top-secret U.S. military drone base in North Dakota, 130 30,000 acres near a U.S. Air Force base in Texas. All told, China has either purchased land, installed telecommunications equipment near 4 U.S. Air Force bases. This is deeply concerning. Any American land owned by China's communist government is a huge problem. Here's what one rancher, because they're buying up ranches and farmland in droves, literally hundreds of thousands of acres. This is what one rancher told our own Sarah Carter. Take a look.
I mean, it's kind of stunning. The Chinese Communist Party is actually purchasing property in the United States of America here, farmlands, ranches.
You know, you're right. It is very shocking, and they're known, adversaries of the United States. So how are we allowing that to happen? And someone needs to ask that hard question and dive into that and hold someone accountable for that, because it's gonna, it's not gonna turn out in a good manner.
The rancher's right. We need to ask the question. Biden needs to answer it because he's doing nothing. However, I must give credit where it's due to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and that would be General Milley. He's been meeting with his counterparts in the region, hopefully building strong enough partnerships to be able to stand up to China, especially their very strong territorial ambitions towards Taiwan and elsewhere. And at the same time, the administration is now looking to ease tariffs, increase imports, and make matters worse. 1 million barrels of American oil that Biden released from our strategic petroleum reserves shipped to China? That's for us in case of an emergency. What's really going on? Here with the full report. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.